Everything seemed to be going fine for the Cleveland Browns on day 2 of the NFL draft. And then Dylan Gabriel happened. Let's talk about it on the latest episode of the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. The Browns were having a terrific day 2 until that one pick at the end of the third round. Why did the Browns go linebacker at 33? And the offense finally has some direction, but there's still one thing missing. I do want to thank you for being an everydayer with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, with bonus content on some weekends as well, and it's all free to you. Just hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts. And, of course, at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, where you can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comment section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, which helps you find qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. And yes, I did think the Browns to this point were having a pretty solid draft, all things considered, even with the controversy that came with taking Mason Graham, trading back, not taking Travis Hunter, and then today starting the day with the Carson Schwesinger pick, where I think it left some people perplexed that they went defense with their first 2 picks, given all the needs they have on offense. They did address some of those needs, which we'll get into. But one of the needs on offense that they finally came around to addressing was at the quarterback position when they stunned everybody with pick 94, the one they got from the Bills in the Amari Cooper trade, by drafting Dylan Gabriel at quarterback over the likes of Shedeur Sanders, who continues to slide. There's the national narrative obviously is centered around Shedeur's falling this far through the draft. As far as why the Browns aren't taking him, we can speculate on that. We'll talk about that here a little bit. But Will Howard's still on the board. They took Dylan Gabriel over him. Like, the first place my mind went was, were they interested in Milroe a couple picks sooner, where he went to Seattle? And because he goes, then they were like, well, here comes the run on quarterbacks. And they sort of said, we're going to get the guy that we like. So they took Dylan Gabriel, who was maybe graded as the next guy they liked. And they legitimately said after the pick was made that they liked Dylan. They spent a lot of time with Dylan in Eugene and elsewhere. And that they felt like, that he was a player that fits what they wanted to do, that he was super accurate. They brushed off the idea of him being a shorter statured quarterback. 5'10" is his listed height, and that wasn't something that seemed to on the tape hinder him, or not something that they noticed on the tape in terms of the way that he played. So that's how they felt about it. And I can wrap my head around the idea that they did like him, and that they felt like he was the guy. Andrew Berry even said that as they thought through scenarios, Dylan Gabriel was somebody they kind of had in mind at pick 94 in that exact spot where they took him. So it's not that they didn't go into this planning this. It's just about what their evaluation came down to. And from the sounds of it, their evaluation came down to they like Dylan Gabriel and enough to take him with their second, third rounder on night 2, pull the trigger probably earlier than expected. And I think that's the thing that's probably the most stunning. Yes, passing on some of the other quarterbacks that were there is perplexing in its own right. The Shedeur Sanders falling through now 3 rounds of the draft, also perplexing to an extent. But the most perplexing part of this is that Dylan Gabriel was a prospect that I think consensusly people believed would be available, tomorrow at the start of day 3. You could have to me, it feels like you could have got Dylan Gabriel with their 4th round pick at 126, or even their 5th round pick that they got from the Houston Texans at 166. Like it felt like this was a reach. And I have been the one banging the drum on this idea that you do on some level have to reach on quarterbacks. But this one felt a little crazy and a little bit outlandish in the grand scheme of things. And I think did throw sort of a wrench and a little bit of a speed bump into what I think was a pretty smooth draft until this point. Like it kind of reminded me of like a DJ scratch on on like a like the records on a record, because you were humming along. You were just kind of, here we come. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. Like it felt like the draft came to a screeching halt for the Browns, where, yeah, some of the picks had, you could ask questions as to why this player, where they took him, why trade back, all these different things. But all the picks up until this point had made sense. The defensive needs they addressed were things that were sensible. You could connect the dots on why they made those picks, right? And then you get Quinshin Judkins, need a running back. He's been my favorite guy in this class. I've talked about that on this podcast. Loved that pick. Then you get Harold Fannin Jr., a guy who is a local guy coming from Canton down the road and brings a lot to the table, can be a weapon in this offense. Kevin Stefanski loves doing the 2 tight end thing, so he allows you to do some stuff with that. Like, again, another pick that I liked. And you're feeling pretty good about things, when in the grand scheme of how the draft was going. And then out of nowhere, just a head scratcher and Dylan Gabriel. So, yeah, it was stunning. It was also stunning because of some of the players that were still there. A guy that came up, Jalen Royals, still on the board at that point for Cleveland, among some other wide receiver options that could have been in play. Tez Johnson was still there. And that continues to be a position that they haven't addressed, which we will get to coming up. So the Dylan Gabriel pick is head scratching. Somebody asked, like, was this about finding their long-term backup quarterback? And I thought about it for a second, like, yeah, okay. Because listen, by trading back like they did on day one, the Browns told you and told everybody, listen, we're all in on trying to find a quarterback next year. I think that became very evident when they made that decision, got the first rounder next year. They're looking at next year's class as the place to find a franchise quarterback, because this class wasn't it. This was not the year to find that guy, which I can understand. And I can understand the thinking there. But here's the thing. If you're trying to find your long-term backup, you don't use a top 100 pick on it. You don't use that level of draft capital on a long-term backup quarterback if that's the thing that you're trying to sort of resolve here. Again, I don't understand it. I don't think anybody understood it. I can hear where Andrew Berry and Kevin, I knew they were going to go quarterback at some point. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew that they would take one at some point. And I kind of just figured, hey, they're going to wait till day 3 to do this, because there were still some names left that value-wise would have made sense. Again, Will Howard, Shedeur is falling this far is another one. Even Gabriel, I think, would have made it back to the Browns at 126. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they had intel that wouldn't have been the case. But the idea that you took him in the 3rd round and maybe this helps you find a long-term backup, I can't subscribe to that. Like, it was a strange pick. I still don't understand it. I think it did sort of throw a damper on what I think was a nice draft to this point. And it's going to be about now sort of salvaging things on day 3 in some respects with players, by the way, that sometimes aren't even really good, that you don't even know if they're going to make the roster. So these were the picks you're supposed to maximize to the best of your ability. I think the Browns and Andrew Berry did that with all of them but the Dylan Gabriel one at 94. And we're going to be sort of left wondering why they made this pick for quite some time. He'll be part of the quarterback competition. They did sort of allude to that. Kevin Stefanski said, hey, everybody who's on this team is competing for starting jobs. And so that suggests that Dylan Gabriel will do the same. I don't think he's going to win the job. I do think we'll see him at some point. But this was the decision that they made. For all the conversations about Shedeur not having a strong arm and others not having strong arms and not being able to play in the weather, it's confusing why Dylan Gabriel is the guy that can thrive in this, as he also talked about wanting to play in warm weather and that he liked warm weather better. It's all very strange. It's all very weird. But here we are. The Browns have at least a one rookie quarterback going into the next season. We'll see what happens on day 3. But the decision after months of speculation on who they would target at the quarterback position came down to Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. And we'll all be left wondering, why that's the guy, and we'll have to just see what he brings to the table when he gets here for the start of rookie minicamp next in a couple weeks, and then as they go through this open competition for the starting role in the months ahead. Another big question I think that came out of tonight was, why did the Browns go linebacker? And defense, again, double up on defense with pick 33 after taking Mason Graham at number 5. Carson Schwesinger was the pick, and I actually thought it was a good one. I'll explain why when we get back on the Locked On Browns podcast. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. Also, here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach for qualified candidates. It's no wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high-quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Epicor. Every team knows the value of hard work, taking pride in what you build, and practicing every detail to get the best results. But no one player, no matter how amazing, can do it all alone. Working together makes getting the win easier. At Epicor, the all-stars are the hardworking manufacturers, distributors who create and deliver the things we all need, from aerospace to electrical to medical devices. Epicor ERP solutions are created by industry experts to help make every day easier. Seeing your whole supply chain is easier. Managing logistics is easier. Responding to price changes also easier. From small businesses with big dreams to growing enterprises with a global vision, we'll equip you with the right tools to move forward, think ahead, and lead the way. Because as the clock ticks down, you need to make the most of every hardworking minute. Easier doesn't cut corners. Easier finds the lane. Discover your success at easierwithepicor.com. That's www.easierwithepicor.com. All right, so round 2 did start with, I think, what was a somewhat, I'm not going to say controversial. I think day 1, the Mason Graham pick became controversial in some capacity for people. But I don't know that the Carson Schwesinger pick was controversial, because honestly, neither of these picks should be controversial, being honest with ourselves, because the value is there for both. But Schwesinger as a selection coming into day 2 with so much hype about, hey, I think when the dust settled on the Mason Graham selection, everybody could understand why they made that, why they did what they did, why they wanted the draft capital, what they're looking ahead to, and also understand that Mason Graham is an uber talented player that's going to be able to have an immediate impact with this team and, thrive potentially alongside Myles Garrett as a defensive interior guy that gets after the passer. Like I can't understate that enough. He was a top 5 player. He deserved to go where he did, and the Browns end up with him. Like that's a good pick when all things are said and done. And the same can be said, in my perspective, with the Carson Schwesinger pick. Value makes sense. Chance to be a really good player. I'll read you the exact quote here from Andrew Berry on why they liked Carson here. He said, "We felt like Carson was a pretty unique player at the position, fast, athletic, really good in the passing game. He can blitz. He's super smart and aggressive. We felt that he was really another modern day archetype at the position, and we really felt like he could help elevate that position room if we can get him if we can get to his potential as to mature." He also added later, like just the emphasis on off-ball linebackers and the idea that they hadn't invested a lot of resources in that position previously. That Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was like the one guy that they had sort of invested in at that position. And so he said, sort of, for us go outside of the norm, we have to protect them and be able to do something special or well above average in the passing game. For Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, that was really his ability as a blitzer. He was a great run defender because he can make plays behind the line of scrimmage and everything, but he was really special, or is really special, I should say, as a blitzer. With Carson, his profile is maybe a little bit different in the fact that he's shown himself to be really strong in coverage, whether it's man or zone. He very much, like Jeremiah, he's good in the run game, very instinctual, a surefire tackler. But when we look at the position, if we're going to invest significant resources, it's, hey, can this player contribute above and beyond on third down? And so they see him as a guy that can be out there for all three downs if needed, can make plays when, you got these longer third down situations and you're looking for somebody that can make like a quick instinctual decision in the passing game, or if it's a run play and a short third down play, can fly up and make that tackle and get you off the field. And so they liked him from an off-ball linebacker standpoint. He was one of the best off-ball linebackers in this class. The pick, to me, when you put it all together into understanding the player that he is, what he brings to the table from a skill set standpoint, a trade standpoint, I mean, the value's there. Look at anybody's ranking of these linebackers and these players as a whole. And Schwesinger was considered a day two guy. He was considered a round two guy in many respects. So, again, I think the value was there. What I will sympathize with fans, though, on is this idea that, like, for this draft to open defense, I understand the disappointment there. That makes a ton of sense. I want to be fair because I don't think it's a bad pick. He is one of the best off-ball linebackers in this class, as I said, rangy, a really hard worker. Here's the other thing. I think Browns fans are going to love this guy as he ingrains himself in Cleveland, gets to know the fan base better. You hear more about his story. This is a kid that was a walk-on at UCLA, earned a starting spot, put up big numbers in his senior year, his junior year, his last year in college at UCLA, 90 tackles, several for a loss, had a couple interceptions, a forced fumble. He was making plays all over the field for UCLA. Like, his story is great. It's classic. Nothing is earned. Nothing is given. Everything is earned in Cleveland. He fits that to a T by being a walk-on who earned his stripes and now earned himself being the number one pick in round 2 in this weekend's draft. Like, he's earned everything that he's worked for. And from that respect, I think he will fit like the culture here, and that fans will take a liking to him, which is awesome. But I do understand where you entered this draft feeling like the Browns had so many needs on offense. It's a little odd to see them then start with the draft with defense, which you can understand for the value of the pick and the player you're getting at that part of the draft. When you're drafting top 5, it often is about like best player available. But then to go defense again with a linebacker, which didn't feel like it was overly pressing because the Browns, to Andrew Berry's point, hadn't invested in the linebacker position a ton before, which is maybe why it was an important position to invest in. But because they hadn't, you sort of felt like they'll figure that one out down the line and, attend to some of the other bigger holes they have. But that wasn't the case. Again, I think Schwesinger is going to be a really good player at the next level. And I like what he brings to the table in his game. But I sympathize with fans who are confused by that. I also will say this felt very much, and as I read you that one Andrew Berry quote where he said like Jeremiah was very good at, and then he kind of corrected himself and said like is very good at. That was interesting to me that he phrased it that way and sort of corrected himself. But Andrew Berry was adamant that this did not have anything to do with Jeremiah and his injury situation and the idea that, he basically may not play next year. And he was asked like point blank period, did taking Carson Schwesinger have anything to do with does it say anything about the timeline for JOK and that he might not be able to play next year? And his answer was no, it doesn't. It was just about making the right decision for the team. And then he was asked as a follow-up, if JOK was completely healthy, would you have still considered him, Carson, here? And he said yes. So listen, obviously Andrew Berry could be lying. These organizations lie about this type of stuff all the time. And when the pick was made, it was like, okay, this does, like, the dots connect there, right? It feels like they're not sure Jeremiah's going to be out there. We got to get somebody to replace him, be that off-ball guy, go run and make plays, drop into coverage and make plays, whatever they need him to do. And that Carson Schwesinger's point was when he talked on the conference call was he can do it all, and he prides himself on that. He's versatile in that way. And so I think they see similarities between him and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah as those off-ball guys, but he was pretty adamant that it had nothing to do with that. So take that for what it is. You can take it with a grain of salt. You probably should. But the Browns did invest in the linebacker room, which is something that they have tended to neglect in the past. And finally then turned the page and went offense immediately after that with pick 36, where they took Quinshin Judkins, which leads us into our final conversation for this episode, because the back-to-back offensive picks at the skill positions they made after Schwesinger were fantastic selections in my mind, with Quinshin Judkins and Harold Fannin Jr. But there's one thing missing now that the offense is starting to have some sense of direction. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get involved in the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy. Whether it's picking my favorite teams or diving into player props, I have everything at my disposal at my fingertips, with a chance to bet big on the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are in the midst of their own little playoff run, but also some of the other teams around the NBA, players that I like, LeBron, in certain props and things like that. And that's the beauty of FanDuel, because after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same game parlay for a chance to win even bigger. Don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. All right, so when the Browns did finally decide to go offense with pick 36, they made, in my estimation, one of the best picks they could make in this draft as a whole, because Quinshin Judkins has been my draft crush this entire draft process. I mean, it's a guy who runs physically, and I comped him to Kareem Hunt is the player he truly reminded me the most of. And the Browns find somebody now to sort of fill that Kareem Hunt role and be but as maybe the lead back of the group, which is awesome. And I've been on the record saying I thought running back was the second biggest need for this team behind the quarterback position. Going into this year, maybe, in terms of what they needed to address on that side of the ball, but also just across this roster. So I love the fact that they ended up with Quinshin Judkins. I wasn't sure how realistic it would be. I knew he had stopped in for a 30 visit. I didn't know if they would actually pull the trigger on him, or if they would like Travion Henderson more, or if they'd wait on running back because this class is so deep. But in the end, it's Judkins. I'm thrilled about it for this team. He is a perfect fit for Kevin Stefanski. Guy that's going to, again, run so physically. He seeks out contact too. Like, even when he's a blocker, he just loves to just go like crush guys, which is fun. This is the style of runner that has thrived in Kevin Stefanski's system before. He has some Nick Chubb in him in that way too, because Nick Chubb runs physically and very he's quick on his. Quinshin's maybe not as quick on his feet as Nick Chubb. Like, he's so nimble, Nick Chubb was or is, if he's back or not. But like the similarities they have is like that ability to hit the hole and just like attack, be aggressive. And Quinshin has that 4.4 speed to go along with it. Like, he's going to be fantastic in this offense. Opportunities galore to really wreak some havoc. And it's going to be interesting to see how they set this room up between him and Jerome Ford, two guys who have sort of different skill sets, and Ford can be more of that pass catcher where Judkins more so of maybe your first or second down guy who can really, pound the rock for you. They did mention him developing that third phase and being able to catch passes, but I feel really good about this selection for the Browns. They followed that up with Harold Fannin Jr., tight end at Bowling Green, who set all kinds of records at the FBS level. Receptions for a tight end in a season, yards in a tight end for a season with 1,555. He had 10 touchdowns last year as well. And what stood out about Harold Fannin Jr. is like his best games came against the best teams that Bowling Green played last year. Had a really good game against Penn State, which was like his breakout game. Then repeated that 2 weeks later against Texas A&M, a big SEC foe. And, that continued then throughout the season. He ended the season with his best performance in, I think it was the Ventures Bowl or whatever the hell it was against Arkansas State, where he puts up 213 yards receiving, which again, record for tight ends in a single game for receiving yards. Just this guy just kept on like clearing every hurdle and one-upping himself throughout the season. It was remarkable. And, what he brings to the table here in Cleveland, another pass catcher in an offense where Kevin Stefanski loves using multiple tight ends, chance to learn from David Njoku and get sort of nurtured under him. And that's the other thing. He's 20. He's got a lot of room to grow and develop here in Cleveland, and a lot of touch points with coaches that will help him add to his game. And while some of his blocking ability has been questioned, I think like his physically, I don't have any doubts about Harold Fannin being able to do what's necessary. I mean, he's 6'4", weighs over 230 pounds. Like, he's going to come in and have an opportunity to bulk up even more, get stronger, and become a more refined blocker. And I use the David Njoku example of like him nurturing him. We all remember David Njoku coming to Cleveland did not want to block. He did not want that to be part of his game. And then he learned to take more pride in it, and it became something that he, wanted to do, and something that I think he's probably one of the best pass or just blocking in general tight ends in football, because of his willingness to, make that part of his game that he actually invested in and cared about. And so he's going to learn from somebody who sort of had a similar complaints coming into the NFL and then took pride in it and learned how to be great at it. So I think that bodes well for Harold Fannin Jr. here. I love both those picks, and they did give the offense a sense of direction finally after 2 defensive picks in a row. And with so many questions about what this offense would look like, you added some weapons for whoever's going to be starting under center. Now, I don't know what this team's gripe is or hesitation is at taking quarterbacks, taking wide receivers in the first 2 rounds of drafts. They don't do it. They do not use top first or second round picks on wide receivers and try to develop them into stars at the next level. And I would love to know why. I would love to know, like, if it's a philosophical thing just in that building. Think about where most of their star receivers have come from. Jerry Jeudy, trade. Amari Cooper before him, trade. They trade for these guys. Elijah Moore, the Elijah Moore experience, they traded for him. And honestly, because they haven't taken one yet, he might come back into play as somebody you bring back to this roster after the draft here. Like, it's getting dire in terms of the options that you have at that position. And I just don't know why they don't invest higher picks in these guys. They did do that with Anthony Schwartz. That didn't work out. They did invest a 3rd rounder in Cedric Tillman, who is coming back next year, obviously still on his rookie deal, trying to maybe take that next step in year 3 and have a more prominent role in this offense. I think they very much believe he can do that and will do that. You don't have anybody else right now, so someone's got to step up into a more higher workload next year. And so Cedric Tillman's going to be it. But again, Cedric Tillman was a 3rd round pick. So they've invested some 3rd round picks, but they've never really sought out investing high end picks first 2 rounds in the wide receiver position. And it is kind of weird that they haven't done that, because that remains probably, it has to be, because even though the Dylan Gabriel pick was head scratching and perplexing as I'll get out, the only offensive position that they really haven't, obviously offensive tackle, but the only other one from like a skill position standpoint that they've done nothing with really this offseason or in the draft, at least with tackle, they've added some guys through free agency. It's wide receiver. Like, they've done nothing there. They've added nobody. And now you're going into day 3, which is, guys that probably you're just kind of hoping stick and can develop over time. They're projects at this point in the draft. Like, it's a crap. The draft's always a crapshoot, but day 3 guys are even more of a crapshoot. And I just don't know what the vision is there unless they have plans to trade for somebody else. But again, as great as I thought the Harold Fannin Jr. and Quinshin Judkins picks were to, again, start getting this offense going in the right direction in terms of having an identity and understanding what they want to do and filling out those skill positions that they need. still a big hole at the wide receiver position, and I don't know why this team is so afraid to draft wide receiver talent in the first couple rounds. We thought they were finally going to do it with Travis Hunter this year. Didn't happen. And so we're left wondering yet again if they'll ever invest high in picks in wide receivers and be able to develop them. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thanks for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. More to come this weekend. We have day 3 of the draft on Saturday, so we'll do a recap show after that one. I'm sure I'll have some shorts up as well on just, each pick and what it sort of means for the Browns, how they fit, all those different things. So stay tuned for that with the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft show, or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs, Locked On Guardians. Thanks for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See you.